Good evening. Welcome to what appears to be the first of 3 classes that we're going to do on the Create module. My intent.
Bunny, the volumes really went down.
Really low. Okay, can you hear me? Are we better?
Yes.
Okay, move the microphone closer to me. So tonight is the first of 3 classes that the plan is to focus on the Create module. There is a lot. I will tell you that before class tonight, I did sit down and actively work through each step of this because I can usually wing it. And the base systems I can wing really well, and Create I can do on my own. But since I'm going to give you some handouts, or there are going to be handouts available, I wanted to follow their verbiage. So it took me a little while. I'll be real honest. Usually I just go in and play. So we will be putting up, and Barbie's going to make a note for me. She's over here over my left-hand shoulder. We're going to put up the next 2 Create classes, and we're going to go ahead and include those. So July 15th and July 29th, I think. The 29th, I may be floating in a pool when we do this, because I'll be at my friend's house and she has a pool. So, you know, if you get to see me on a raft, so be it. We're going to go ahead and include those classes. I know we talked about at some point there would be a fee. When I can't start Create and then start to charge you in the process. So they'll go up on the website tomorrow. The class 7, the modify class, did just go up on YouTube today. We had trouble with it downloading and converting from Zoom for a couple of days. It's just kind of in chaos. So with that said, I also will preface with, I hope everybody has a great holiday weekend. If there's anything, you know, that you need to do with family or friends, please do it. If you can avoid work at all, please do. We are actually closed Saturday, and well, we're always closed on Sundays, but we closed Saturday so everybody could have a weekend. Although we are running for our local folks, you guys got some emails. We are running some specials over the holiday weekend. That said, let's go ahead and get started and talk about the Create module. Did anybody have any questions while I was going about anything else, or you guys were just chatting? And we
Bunny, I have,
yes,
it's Betty Ann. Hi, I have one question. When you say Create, is this, and you said it was classes 1 through 3. What happened to class 8 in the series we were doing? Is this different?
No, this is class 8, but
okay,
it is focusing on the Create module.
yes.
So there will be 3 pieces of the Create module. So it'll be 8, 9, and 10.
Thank you.
The whole series. No, I understand it's confusing.
Okay.
I have to keep counting. And we actually didn't, hi Beth, we didn't count our first class as class 1. So that's my dates and times are way off. Okay, so let's do a couple of things. Let's go ahead and spotlight me for everybody. Let's not look at that though. And there's a question in chat. Handouts are going to be 3 separate ones, Marjorie. We looked at the counts and they were pretty comparable. And since it's 3 separate classes, basically that's the only way that the store is generating any income from the classes. So, you know, and if you don't buy the handouts, that's okay too. We're going to go ahead and screen share. Let's see if I can use my brain here. Nope. Okay, we're going to share my whole screen. And what I did to start was went ahead and opened my Premiere Plus 2 embroidery system from my desktop. Now let me go ahead and close that. So there we are. And here is my desktop. And I'm going to go ahead and open my configure, because just like we have in the past, I want to reset all modules. That will make sure that all of the screens kind of start at the same place for everybody. Once I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and say OK. And the only way into Create, and I think 3D actually was the last one that had a direct link into the digitizing system. But I'm going to go into my embroidery module, and that will go ahead and open up here. But from here, I'm going to use that stupid little toolbar at the bottom that I don't think belongs at the bottom. And I'm going to go to create, which is the little red flower. Now, Barbie, since you're here, do you see this bar when I do the share screen? Okay,
I
good.
can see it on mine.
You're a co-host though. So
Oh, yeah, that's true.
see it.
you guys can all see it? Okay. Okay, Barbie says she can't. I keep trying to move it out of the way. It makes me a little crazy. Okay, so I'm gonna keep moving it out of the way. So we're gonna open create. Now, if you're using a computer that is a slower processor, I will sort of warn you that this opens a whole secondary program. So you may wanna go and make sure that other things are shut down. Like right now I have the embroidery system was open in a folder. So I'm gonna quickly shut that down. Create will look familiar at this point because we talked about the Express Design Wizard in Extra. So we can create an Express embroidery, and here's a thumbnail of it to the right. We can create an Express trace, which is basically gonna follow the lines, either with a straight line or a decorative stitch, however we set that. Create an Express border will follow again the lines, but this time with a satin stitch. But now we have some more options. And this is not quite on the handout, but I'm going to go through them anyway. We can load a picture into the paint window. So basically this is the Microsoft Paint system. It's just part of the Design Creator module where you can do some editing of an image ahead of time. If you have any other kind of editing software, I do recommend that you use that instead of this, but it is nice to have if you need to do a quick edit. Loading a vector image into the screen. So the next two pieces are really about manually digitizing. We're not going to quite get there, at least not tonight, but vector images versus like JPEGs and bitmaps and things. They're just different types of images. Vector images are basically mathematical images that come in typically in layers. And also when you scale them, they adjust. I don't know how else to explain it. And somebody who understands graphic images can probably explain it better than I can. Then loading an existing design, this will actually allow me to bring up something that I'm already working on or something that already exists. And then I can start from scratch. So if you're super artistic, you can absolutely start and just sort of draw and create stitches as you go. I do recommend that you go through and kind of try all of these, but for tonight, we're going to create an Express embroidery. I'm going to say next, and I'm going to load a picture. Now, I did this already, so it's sort of preset to where I was, but I went under my documents, Premiere Plus 2, samples, and it's a little bit hard for me to see this column because it starts to get cut off, but I do have this little slider bar at the bottom. And I'm going back to the same folder we used before, Premiere Plus 2 EMB, Pix 2 this time, and Climate. Now I've got all my little thumbnails. We want to start with the snowman. So I'm going to select him and then say okay. And then this is also where I could have copied an image from somewhere else and pasted it right into my screen. I could load from a camera or a scanner. I could potentially bring in things from social media, but we're not looking at my social media because that would be bad. And we're going to say next. The system here automatically crops for the design. I can zoom in if I want to look at a particular piece. I can zoom to fit. Zoom to fit shows the whole piece, including whatever background there was on the left, but on the right, it's zoomed into the actual design, regardless of the background. Rotation we've talked about. This little piece here I was playing with earlier, this perspective correction. So if you have an image that maybe started with a photograph and it kind of was a little wonky, so don't do this, but I was playing with it. And I was like, what does that do? Oh, it changes the angle that I start to look at this from. So I can play with it a little bit, but then my snowman gets a little like he's, I don't know, doing some drugs. So I'm gonna go back to automatic and let him be where he was. I don't need to play with the rotation angle, although you can if you want to on yours. If I make modifications and I want to save my modifications, I can do that on the right-hand side here. It says save picture. We're going to go next. And we can do a little bit more than we could with the Express Design Wizard, because now I can set a specific size and I can do that in a hoop, but it's not necessarily in relation to the hoop. So that's kind of a nice change. What we want to do is set the design size to a 200 millimeter in height. So this is a pretty big snowman. And now I'm going to go back to the handouts because I get about this far just from memory.
Bunny,
Yes, ma'am.
rotate, make it the hoop natural.
And I'm getting there.
Sorry.
But I'm going to do this design size first because I'm not going to fit it to hoop. So I was up here. And then we do want to change the hoop to a natural rotation or a vertical rotation. And that just allows him to fit in a little bit better. Now, would he have fit at 200 millimeters high in my hoop the other direction? He would. He just wouldn't center quite as well. And then we say next. The system automatically goes in and defaults to the software, to the thread. Now, I went ahead and picked my Floriani Poly 40s, but as a default, Robus and Anton comes in. We in our store carry Isacord, Robus and Anton, Floriani, Embellish. Yeah, there's 4 brands. So we have all of them. So if we look at this, when we talk about one of the reasons that this software is so amazing, and we've talked about this a little bit before, but I haven't focused on it quite as much. There are so many different brands of thread in here. There's DMC floss for hand stitching. So if I have a cross stitch that I want to bring over, I can start with my DMC colors and then do some conversion and let the software try and get as close as it can. So whichever brand of thread you want to work with, that's perfectly fine. We can change all to that. If I look at the 7 colors, this is a nice clean piece of clip art. There's not a lot of bleeding of color from one section into another. This is going to be the best way for us to learn digitizing, is with really clean, clear imagery. When our images get a little bit fuzzy, real pixelated, or they come in as photographs or things that we've scanned, then it becomes a lot harder for the system to automatically define areas. And that relies then on me or you to define it a lot more. I can move these threads around within this process if I want to. We're not going to do that right now. Same things we talked about before. The background color got automatically selected, and as a default, it takes away the background color. Now, if I, for some reason, want my green in there, I can go ahead and leave that, but I don't recommend it. And we talked in a previous class about picture options. So I can do a little tiny bit of modification to my image right here, but I don't need to for this one. If I say next, the software does its thing, figures out its math. Here is where I can make a little bit of sort of prep work for me and go in and say, what type of fabric am I stitching on? For tonight, we want to leave that at woven. We do want to add the additional layer of underlay. And we're going to go ahead and let it default to fill stitches. And the reason that we're going to let this default is because I may want it to be something else. I may want some of this to be satin stitch, but I've got the ability in the create module to go ahead and make those changes as I go. So if I've changed anything in here, I can go ahead and click refresh preview. I did add the underlay. The underlay does not preview at all, but I did get a few more stitches out of that. And if I say finish now, this goes ahead and drops this design in the center of this hoop. Has anybody not played with this at all? At this point, here we have, I see you there. We have on the left-hand side a film strip Now, the film strip in my Sonnet, and Karen can correct me, the film strip is now active in the basic
The-
embroidery module as well.
It's wonderful, very handy.
So that really gives you a lot more visibility of the pieces of your design when you're just doing your basics with it. In the Create module, the film strip actually was something that we didn't have at one point, and it came around, I want to say 5D. Do you remember, Karen?
I think, yeah,
And
that sounds right.
film strip existed in the old auto digitizing system, which was way back when, almost 20 years at this point. And it was something that those of us who used that system liked, but then when that software basically was dropped, we didn't have it, and then it came back. And the film strip just really allows us to kind of see everything a little bit better. So real quickly, on the left-hand side, you see our first color change. Color changes are indicated by this little blue, red, and green little blob. And then you see each piece. Now, this first segment here, this is the underlay. So we've got some underlay under there. Then you see I've got another color change, still white, but now I'm into the fill segments of my embroidery. Okay, so let's go ahead and play with the snowman's head, because, you know, we want him to lose his head. So I can access each piece by either clicking on the item in the center of my screen, or I can come over to the film strip and select it. So it's a great kind of twofer way to get to things. It also makes it easier to select little tiny components by using the film strip. Now, once I've selected this, I can actually grab this. Hang on. I did this earlier, and it's going to give me fits. Okay, because I can't get to the other control that I want. And we're going to ignore the beeping noises and turn those off on my phone over here. Sorry about that. I can zoom to rectangle, and I can kind of zoom around his little face. Oops, and I have to undo zoom to rectangle. I did this earlier too. I was like, I'm done this. I've prepared, but now all these little black things are in my way. Okay, if I right click to turn off zoom to rectangle, now I've got his little head, and I can, why are you not doing what I want you to do? Nope. We're gonna try this again. Right click, there he is. Zoom to rectangle, to his little face. And I've got just his face selected, and I can't make it move like I did earlier, which is okay, it happens. When I do have a, go ahead.
What are you trying to make move?
Trying to make his head come off his neck. I did it.
Oh,
I'm having a moment, it'll come to me. When I do have this selected, you'll see on the top toolbar where we have edit points. So if I need to play with where any of these sort of pieces are, I can actually grab each node or point. We've used the word node before. Back in the original DOS software, they were nodes, and I use bad words a lot. And our nodes, you can see, are both square in some cases and round. Okay. So those help us kind of define the areas. Now, these lines look like they're inside the black because they are, because the white actually extends a little bit underneath the black. That's just a sort of piece of advice with digitizing in general, is if you bring your two pieces up to meet one another, you very often will see a gap between them. So that's sometimes a really good clue with digitizing. A better digitizer allows for a little bit of overlap of the colors so that you don't get any gap where you see the background fabric or stabilizer or whatever it is through. So that overlap is pretty normal. You can see it a lot right down here where the neck scarf comes into play. Okay, and if I want a different section of this design, I'm going to go and zoom back out to all, zoom to fit. I can go through my film strip and kind of click on each different piece, and I can see the different segments. So this is a great way to kind of see where things are. So I've got my underlays here, and now I've got all my fill. Now, if my snowman has been out in my backyard and he's a yellow snowman, I might want to go ahead and change my color, and I can do that right there with that color change. But I'm not going to do that because I don't eat the yellow snow. Actually, I don't eat snow anymore at all because it's kind of scary. So here's my zoom again. We're going to see if I can make this work. I'm going to zoom to rectangle. I'm going to drag a box around his head. I'm going to right click to release that. Oh, this is what I didn't do. And then I didn't box select. I knew I was skipping something up at the top. And if I draw a box around, now I've got just my snowman head, and I can take his head off of his neck. And this is where you can see that underlay underneath. I knew I was skipping something. But that's a great way to kind of see where each piece is. Now, it grabbed his head and his mouth a little bit. To put that back and not have to worry about, did I line it back up? I'm just going to click on undo and put that back around. Okay. We can right click again, and that will release the box select because I have this highlighted up here. It's an orange. If I right click, it goes away and that selection comes off of there. When I come off of that, I come back to my edit points. And if I zoom out, I don't have anything selected to edit, but I am still back on my edit point controls. If I zoom to all or zoom to fit, that takes me again back out to my hoop. And I can look again at another piece. This time I can look at the broom over here. Now the broom is stitched in 3 separate sections. I've got sort of the bristles, I've got the little segment in between, and then I've got, well, 4 if you count the handle. I've got the base and the handle. So let's go ahead and look at our bristles. And I'm again going to zoom back in. So I'm going to click my zoom to rectangle. Did I skip 18? Barbie says I skipped number 18. No, we'll go back to that. I did. I'm going to do this out of order. Sorry. And I want to just go ahead and focus. Guys, you're in the way. I want to focus on just this segment. I'm going to right click to deselect that zoom to rectangle. And when I do that, it also, because I right clicked on that area, it also selected that area. Now, this looks okay. It looks like a flat broom looking thing. Below it, it looks like a satin stitch in here because the system won't do 100% fill if it really feels like the sizing is such that it needs satin stitch. So if I want to change this, because I want it to look more like a broom, I can right click on that, and then this will bring up my fill area and line controls. So this is a great place where I can go in and change things. Now, this first top control, if I drop down on this list, it gives me all of these options. If I don't want any fill there, I don't want any stitching there, okay. And I can apply, and it just takes away the fill in the center, but it does still give me a border. And you can see, I can see all that underlay underneath. That's not really what I wanted, but I just wanted to show you. So I'm going to undo and come back. Okay, so these are all different fill options that you can play with. Because it has come up in the past, I'm going to quickly show you the crosshatch fill. This is a really good piece to use if you're trying to put a nap blocker down, or a, what's the other word I want? Karen, help me.
Oh, all the different.
You know what I mean? They're nap blockers, or they're, if you have anything with any kind of loft to it, anything furry, you can use it to.
Oh, yeah.
Embossing.
Embossing, yeah.
Yeah, you can use it kind of.
Some people call it a knockdown,
Down stitch. Yep, thank you.
but I think that's term is proprietary to one software
That's
or
fine.
one company, and Viking calls it embossing.
Well, yeah. Anyway, so this is the crosshatch fill is what I would use if I wanted to create an area to do that.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm doing. So let's go back to my pattern fill. I want to stick with the pattern fill, but let's talk about how many pattern fills do I have to choose from. So a little bit lower down, you see the big orange square. If I go to the drop down arrow below that, well, let's just kind of look without Bunny trying to make us dizzy. We've got a lot of fills built into software. Y'all could be here for days picking these.
Is it over 100? I can't remember the count.
It's a lot. It's more than my brain is working on right now. But I want this to look like a broom. So you know what? I want some lines. So standard 2 or standard 3, give me some lines. And the instructions say to go to standard 2, number 21. I actually kind of like 22 better. So I'm going to select that. Now I have angle here, and that's lovely if I know what my angle needs to be. I'm going to leave everything else where it is. I'm going to leave the density alone. I'm going to leave underlay alone, but I do recommend going in and playing with these and seeing what happens. I'm going to apply that. Say, okay. Well, this looks actually a lot straighter than I had anticipated it looking, but it's not quite as straight as I want it to be. So in here, you see that we have some controls. Watch what happens if I grab the little dot and change the angle of my fill. So while the number is lovely, if I know what my number needs to be, if I'm a visual person, I can actually do it by sight. And y'all, I want it like right in between those two locations. I'm gonna make myself crazy. Now, right now, this is cute, but it doesn't look quite so broomy to me. So let's go ahead and make a little change up here at the top, and I can do that by inserting points. So right now I'm on edit points, so I can move the existing points. But what happens if I insert points? I highlight my insert point, and I just click somewhere on all of these different, and I'm trying hard not to make changes at this point to the line. But you see, sometimes if I click off the line, it does change it a little bit. And now I can come in and I can play with these. And I can really change the angle of the end of my broom. Now, what you do see underneath, you still see that brown because you're seeing the original image underneath there. Okey-dokey. So I can futz with this and play with it. And if I pull it down too far, you start to see the white, and that is my underlay. So I may not want it to show my underlay. So I can really make this look a little more jagged at the end, like I might want a broom to be. Or I might expect a broom to be. I don't expect an older wicker-ish, I guess that's what that is, broom, to be perfectly, you know, straight across the bottom by the time I stick it out on a snowman. So I've got a little bit of variable there, and if I zoom back out and I select something else, you can see we've got that just a little bit more texture added. So we've got the ability to go ahead and, you know, make those changes as we need to. Now, if I put in way too many changes, I could go and I can delete points. So right next to insert points is delete points. If I wanted to move, I'm going to come back to this. If I wanted to move multiples at once, I'm going to zoom back in and I'm going to show you. I could actually grab multiples. So I could grab this one and then I could grab this one and watch what happens. I'm going to use my control button on my keyboard And see how that snaps those from round to square? It makes them sharp points. So control button down and left click, and that makes them much sharper as opposed to that rounded. So we can fine tune this as needed. Now I'm just going to stop that partway through. I don't think that in this case it makes that much of a difference, but there are times where we may want something to be absolutely angular. Now, what Barbie said I skipped, so I'm going to go back to, and I apologize that this is going to be upside down for those of you once you have the instructions in your hand, is the snowman himself. Well, I changed the fill on the broom. That's great. The snowman himself is pretty boring looking right now because this is the default fill for everything. So I want to go and find where that color change is. The first white color change is my underlay. My second white color change is my snowman. And I want to go and find where my snowman white pieces end, which is here. And depending upon your computer, it may have processed them differently. Most computers will process kind of background to foreground, but some may not. So I'm going to left click on my color change, then I'm going to hit my shift button on my keyboard and then left click here. And what this does is it grabs everything at once. And I can go ahead and I am a little bit out of order, but that's all right. I can go ahead and group them so that they stick together by right clicking and group. And then here we see I have this whole group. And if I want to see everything within the group, I can display the group contents. Or if I've set what I want here, I can actually hide all the group contents. So if I had something really elaborate, I might work on a section and then sort of close that folder and work on a section and then close that folder. It would just help me visualize and see everything a little bit better. If I want to make changes to everything in here at the same time, and in this case I do because I want all of these pieces to be the same. The only exception for me might be the band on the hat. We're going to leave it alone for right now. I can right click and I can ungroup these. Right click and group them as I want, but I can also right click and I can go to properties. Now, if I'm grouped, all of my properties will be for everything that's selected. If I ungroup and only select one section, then I'm going to impact that one section alone. So it's really up to you how you want this to be. But what we'd like to do is change this pattern fill to something that looks more like snow. Now, I don't think this one looks like snow, but they say it does. So in the instructions, the piece that I undid. No, that was not what I skipped. I did that one. We'll come back to this. We're going to drop down and now we can change this to a different fill. And let's go ahead and change it to something more interesting that looks more like they say snow. It's actually waves. But if you're following along, you can pick something else. And what the instructions give me is waves number 239. I don't think that looks like snow, but I have opinions and they're not always right. So you could scroll through these and find something that looks more like snow to you. That one looks more like snow and say, okay. And you see now I get all this texture in here. And if I want to change the angles within this, I can right click, go to properties. And then this is a place where I would need to, because I have multiples, I would need to work with the angle itself. Number, and go there and change the direction. Or if I ungroup and I select a particular piece, now I'm going to zoom back into this so we can see him a little bit better. I'm going to try and do this right this time. I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to right click to deselect the zoom, and then I'm going to box select him. Okay, that's where the body of that snowman is. I can move that out, move it back in. I don't want to box select, so I'm going to right click to remove the box select. And then if I, again, left click, and I know this is a lot of left and right, and I apologize. If I left click, I get my edit nodes or edit points. And you'll see I also get the controls in here. My start point is my green, my end point is my red, and here is my angle. And I can play with the angle of my piece. And the centerpiece is kind of my origin. Now the origin doesn't make as much sense in this. And what I'm about to show you is not in your instructions, but I want to show you when we talk about origin. If I change the fill to something that has a much more elaborate, so we're going to go with the face. Now you just have to kind of take it for what it is. But do you see how the origin sits kind of in the crosshairs of these faces? So there are times where origin does not matter so much for something like that zigzag fill, but for something like the faces, I may want to be sure that my buttons line up with, there you go. My buttons line up with maybe those center faces. So the origin is a point within the fill stitch that makes kind of impacts everything. Oh, this is making me dizzy. I apologize if it's making you dizzy too. So I can really come in here with certain fills and really fine tune the angle and the location and where maybe that first stitch point or needle point is going to hit as it relates to whatever the field is that is being filled. Okay, I can fine tune pieces even more if I come up to the top toolbar and I go to edit. And in edit, I can actually work with different color blocks, the top left on the toolbar. So I'm going to go back to the bottom right and zoom to fit so we can see everything. I'm going to cancel that. And I'm going to, again, cancel that because that's not what I wanted to do. And if I go through all of my different color blocks, this first color block is the fill, not the fill, excuse me, is the underlay. Okay, so I put in a second layer of underlay. That's why you see the whole thing in there twice. My next is my white. And again, you're seeing all the other things here because they're not gone. They're just not showing in the stitch component. And that's a little bit hard to differentiate, but right now all we're seeing is the stitching or the simulated stitching overlaying the image. Next is my gold, okay? And it took me, the first time I looked at this section, I had to look at it a couple times. It's both the lines on the broom and the nose. So it's more orange than gold. My scarf is here with my blue and my red. Okay, my red is last. I'm sorry, and then my black is last. I will tell you, this is a great time for us to go ahead and look at this design and actually see, because as I go through these color segments, in my head, I kind of go, what's where? How do I want it? Maybe that's not stitching in the order I want it to. I definitely want my underlay first. I go next. Okay, I definitely want my white there. I don't necessarily think I want my orange at this point because I haven't stitched my broom. There's my scarf. I'm okay with that. There's my red. Did I skip over the broom? Oh no, the broom comes up last. Well, that's definitely wrong. So let's look at it in a couple of the ways that we have within the system that are kind of prevalent everywhere. Life view just allows me to look at the design. And I can zoom in. And I can zoom out and I can change kind of the angle that I'm looking at things from to see how light might be reflecting off of the stitching on my broom. Or the stitching on my face. So that's kind of where life view can be really helpful. And then I can kind of move around left, right, up and down. So I may have zoomed way in to something, but I want to see the broom piece, and I want to see the mittens, and I want to see the buttons. And I want to make sure I don't make you dizzy and go up and down. Or I can just zoom back out. Now this is also a place where if I want to show someone maybe what I've done, the changes that I've made, I can go ahead and come right here to my USB and save the picture or save the video, share the picture or video. So what size do I want to share it? I can save it to, even though it's a floppy disk still, but this is just our save icon for the rest of our lives when people have never seen floppies again. Or we can share it out to social media if that's something you want to do. So maybe you have a Facebook group that you want to show something that you've created, or you want to ask an opinion. Do you like this fill better than this fill? We've got the tools to do that pretty easily for people who don't have embroidery software. Okay. But let's go ahead and look at the more detailed piece, the design player. The design player, this is my only thing about the design player. I wish I could make it full screen. I can't. For me, it's a little. So we're going to play the design player, and I will tell you that I'm going to speed up the beginning of it, because it takes first stinking ever, and it's hard to see because it's all of this white on this blue background. Now, remember, we talked at one point about the background color in our configure. So if I've got a lot of white on blue and I want to see this, I might go into configure and change my background color. But let's go back into player, which is still really slow. Okay, and now I'm starting to get some fill. Well, that makes sense. I would want to do the white. That is the farthest back. So think of it, if you're painting a painting, you're going to paint your background before you paint your foreground, before you paint, potentially the detail. So really the body of the snowman is the background. Again, it did the hat piece. I may not be super excited about that where it is, but I'm going to leave it alone for now. And it's always, for me, really interesting to watch a design build, because I'm like, why did it go here and leave a gap? Oh, well, because when it came back up, it reconnected those. I can change some of that a little bit by changing my start and end point. I definitely did not like those bands on the orange, but my broom isn't there yet. For making a broom, you've got to do the bristles of the broom and then wrap it. And I also sort of think we put our mittens on last. So, okay, now I'm going to back up here a little bit, and I want to show you. We're going to pay close attention right here. And I'm going to slow this down. I'm going to do that again. Okay. I'm going to speed him up just a smidgy. I want you to watch where we are. Okay, did the center button first and then jump down here. And now it's going from the bottom button and jumping to the top button, just because I know that's what it does. And then we jump up to the mouth, and we're starting in the center of the mouth and working our way outward. And then over to my eyes. And for me, this is all a little backwards. I think that these should sort of stitch in a much more continuous manner, and I would rather them kind of make as little movement, as little jump as possible. They'll make it faster. The machine's not moving It's far from place to place. I have less possibility of it pulling bobbin thread up. So remember, on the left, we have a film strip. We can go in and actually make some changes to where all these pieces are. I'm just going to fast forward this to the end. Okay, so we know I've got a couple of things I don't like. I don't like where the broom is. I want my mitten on top of my broom. I want my orange on top of my broom. And I want to change the order that the black pieces stitch in. And that's really pretty simple to do. And we're going to do that by going back to our home tab. Well, first I'm going to display all objects because I want to see everything. Because I know from experience, if I do not display all objects, that I will not see the other pieces. And I go back to home and I scroll up on my film strip. I absolutely know that I want my underlay first, and I want my snowman background next. Okay. But I've determined that I really want my mittens absolutely dead last. So I can go ahead and find where my color change happens for the mitten. And you see this is a little C here. And then I have my two mitten sections. So I want to grab all three of those. And I can either hit the control button and select them individually. And that works really well if you have pieces sort of scattered everywhere, or if they are all together. I can select the first one and hit the shift button on my keyboard and grab the last one. Now this is where I can right click and I can group it, because I know I want those all together. And I don't necessarily need to see the contents of that group. I have my mittens, they're red. I want them to stitch absolutely last. Well, down here at the bottom of the film strip, I have moved to the bottom, well, to the front of the design or the bottom of the film strip. What that means is it's going to stitch last. Okay, so now it's after the handle for my broom, much better. But I still have this issue with my orange. So I'm going to scroll up on my film strip. I'm going to find my orange. I'm going to go through that same selection, top piece, because I'm not sure if I'm going to get all the right ones. So the top one was the color change. I'm going to use the control button on my keyboard. I'm going to select pattern. Okay, definitely want that pattern section. There's a single jump stitch in there. I'm going to leave that be. Pattern. That's the other sort of horizontal bar on my broom. Okay. My last pattern is my nose. I want all of those, but I don't want to move them to the very bottom. I could just move them forward or downward slowly. Now I will tell you it actually is faster at this point to move it to the bottom or the front of the design and then move it up one. So it's in front of. Oops, and I merged those. How did I merge those, Karen? I'm gonna undo.
Undo button.
That's why, yep, that's why I have an undo button. Okay, but here's my red group. I still really want that last, so I'm gonna move the red down to the bottom. I actually don't think it was supposed to merge them, but you know, it did. Want to be watching chat? Okay, just asking. So, okay, I've got my arrangement where I want it now. Just to see, I'm going to go ahead and show all the items in the group in the red so I can kind of see where we were there. We've got that. That's a little better. Let's look at my player again. I'm going to play, but this time I'm going to play it a lot faster because I know some of the things I have going on here. Here's my white. I haven't touched anything with the buttons or the coal for his eyes and his nose and his mouth. Not nose, his nose is a carrot. Well, it's hot enough and out right now that we need to be talking about snowman, because I think most of the country is sweltering. Is anybody somewhere where it's chilly? Anybody at all? I mean, other than inside in the air conditioning. Okay, so here's my fill. We've moved a little faster. There's my scarf. There's my buttons, my black in my order that I don't like. But alrighty. There's my broom. Okay, I'm happier with the orange on top there, and my mittens are on top of everything. That makes better sense to me, but let's talk about these black pieces. So in the interest of being able to see lots of things at once, I'm going to go ahead and group my orange pieces. I'm going to group those, and I'm going to hide the group properties for both of those. I'm going to do the same with my broom. I'm going to go to the top, use my shift button, select, right click, group. And because I'd already told it to hide the group contents, it kind of smushes them down or compresses them. I'm going to come back up to the top. I'm going to grab all of my white, including my underlay. So go to the first white color change, come to what on me is number 10, shift, right click, group those. And I'm going to do the same with the scarf, just to take that down to a little bit less. Because now I can really try and focus on, here's my black color change. I don't even need that. I'm just going to scroll down just a smidgen so that now I have all of these bits and pieces. Now you see we have all these little circles, and it can be kind of hard to find which one is which. And I have all of these little single stitches. So all I'm going to do is click on them. Okay. The second one down for me is the bottom button. I want that to stitch first. I want to work bottom up. So I'm going to move that one up one. Now I've got my bottom button. I've got my middle button. I've got my center button. Okay, I'm good with that. So now I know I've got the first three. Just in the interest of not seeing them, I'm going to go ahead and just scroll down a little bit more. And now I'm looking at the mouth and starting center out. Well, that would be great if we were embroidering this on a cap on a machine with a rotating frame. But that's not how this works on a home machine. So I have to decide, do I want to go left to right or right to left? Entirely up to you. In my case, I decided earlier I was going to go right to left. So now I have the furthest right, and I'm going to move that up. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm going to click up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now I have to go find the second piece. I can either come over here and try and click on it, but that may be harder. I want to go up 1, 2, 3, 4. Now for me, it's easier to go and count, but you can just go ahead and grab these and drag them around. Okay, I still have this one that's out, and so I may drag it up. Okay, so now I have far right, next, next. I'm almost at the center. Oh, I got an eyeball in the way. I don't want the eyeballs in the way. I want this one. But where did I want it? Now I'm mathing again. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to move this one up above this single stitch. So I can left click and drag. Center, center. Now I know that I've got eyeballs in my way. So here, I'm going to grab this one and drag it. So you guys see what I'm doing? I'm kind of finding each piece and I'm just reordering them. And I might want to do my right eyeball before I do my left eyeball before I do my right eyeball, just from a jump perspective. I went around kind of counterclockwise. From here, I have a pattern fill. So I'm going to bring this up. And then I have this pattern fill up at the top. So I'm going to bring that up. And what it leaves me with is this series of little single stitches. I don't necessarily need those. So you can right click and just delete those. If you feel like there's an extra stitch, this is not a jump stitch, but an extra stitch that does not serve you well. And now if I go back to Design Player, and I fast forward at the beginning a little bit. Oops, have to push the play button. So we know the white part is slow because there's a fair amount of underlay under there. Now our fill starts, and I know this is boring, and I apologize. Y'all can see me bopping. Watch this. Normally I turn my camera off at this point. And a little faster. Okay, there's my scarf. And oh, look, my buttons and my eyes and my mouth went in some order that made some sense. Okay, I'm happier with that. Now, we have all these other pieces of artwork that you can play with and kind of replicate these kinds of steps and just see what happens. Until you save it as something, it isn't anything. And because these came in originally as artwork, it's not going to hurt anything if you save this. So, okay, I like this where it is. I will tell you, I am going to make one more change. So I'm going to display all the group contents. And if I'm happy, I can go ahead to File and Save. If I save it, it saves as what's called an EDO file. So this is a digitizing file that's still malleable. So that I can say, you know what, I didn't like that fill stitch and I don't want to start over. I can just reopen the EDO file. So I do recommend that you save them as EDO files, just like we talked about in embroidery. Saving it as a VP4 is still malleable. And then if I have a particular file format I need to use, we can file and export. And then that's the same exporting process we've talked about before. But I have one more thing I want to change. And that is, I don't think that this band up here is necessarily well suited to be part of the white, because I feel like it looks like he's got a weirdly shaped head that's sticking up in some places. So I want to ungroup all of my white because I really want to get to this little piece right here. And if I can't left click on him, I can find him over here on the film strip. And here's what I want to do. I want to make him red. My red's at the bottom. So I'm going to move him all the way to the bottom. And look what happens. Because I moved it past another color stop. And that's what happened earlier with the carrots. I moved them past another carrots and that strip on the broom. When I move it past another color stop, it changes it to the other color. Now, I could also be persnickety and I could right click and I could change the properties of this because this needs to maybe be a different fill pattern than the other pieces were. And I may want that to be a 90 degree, so it's a horizontal. Okay. It actually should have been more than 90 because horizontal does not work with this particular thing. But now this looks a lot more like a hat for me. And less like some weird extension of his head. Did all of that make sense to everybody? This is like the baseline on digitizing. It's using the wizard to create an image and then modify that. This is a lot like what we do with existing designs, where we go into the modify tab and I erase parts of it or I resize a part of it. It's just working with things that are pre-existing. Could you guys not see my screen? Because now it says you can now screen.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, I just got a message that popped up and I was like, wait, did nobody see 3/4 of what I just did? That would be bad. So go over the EDO files again. Okay, so I'm going to go back to home, because that's kind of the screen that we're most familiar with. This looks a lot like things that we already know. If I want to save it, I'm going to file. If I just save, I run the risk of it overwriting something. So I always use save as. So when I save as, there's only one real option of file format when I just save as, or even when I save in the create module, it saves a digitizing file, which is an EDO file. Don't ask me where they came up with those 3 letters. Karen, do you know? Embroidery digitizing?
This editable design object.
Thank you. I knew she would know something that I don't.
So these aren't stitches yet.
Right. Yeah, these are still just instructions.
They're idea, yes.
So an embroidery machine will not read an EDO file, and other software programs will not read an EDO file. And so just for, for me, for tonight, I'm going to go ahead and save this to the desktop, and I'm going to save it as snowman, and it's going to automatically default to EDO, and we save that. Now, if I want it as an embroidery file, I'm also going to file, export embroidery. I'm going to save it as a VP3. Okay. And same thing. Remember that anytime we export something, the system right now is set to automatically add the word exported. I don't necessarily want that, so I'm going to erase it. Snowman VP3. So let me show you what happens when we start, and I'm going to go to new. Okay, and I'm just going to start a new design. Well, I'm going to load an existing design. Okay, load a design. And let me bring this out of the way. Okay, this, when I load a design, it loads EDO files only. So that's not inserting an embroidery. If I look on the top toolbar, you see where there's insert embroidery. That's a different animal. So I want to load an EDO file. There are some already in the software, but I'm going to scroll up, go to my desktop. Here's my snowman, finish. And this brings up the same piece that I can manipulate and modify. Now, if I insert an embroidery file, and I'm going to go back to my desktop. I don't know where he went. Pretty sure I saved him. Did I not export him? Well, I'm going to insert a different embroidery file just because I thought I did. Okay, here's something else that we did. This is just from a Kimmerbell event. So here's an embroidery design. Now, Robin had asked about modifying an embroidery design before. I can go ahead and find here's my satin stitch. Double stitch, double stitch. There's a lot of pieces to this, a lot of pieces. Running stitch. My light blue. Okay, this gray blue. Satin column. So here's the answer, Robin. If I brought in an existing embroidery design, here's the satin column. If I right click on this and I look at my properties, okay, I can play with my density, but I still can't make it a wider satin. Even here. But I could convert it to something else. So there is the ability to modify existing embroidery designs to a degree, but it's not going to allow me to start kind of from scratch the way we could. Somebody's ring doorbell just went off.
Yeah, that's mine.
Okay, I've gotten very familiar with that sound recently. So that's where the difference in EDO file is, Karen correctly
Yeah.
told me, because that is not a piece of information that I'd ever stuck in my head. An editable design object, as opposed to a
Those
locked
are
in
not
embroidery
stitches.
design.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
And can you also explain why it's important to choose the fabric type?
So the fabric type, I can, and we talked about that a little bit before. So here's what I'm going to go off sort of topic a little bit as far as that goes. Let me grab this group and I'm going to ungroup it. Okay, so here's a whatever piece of my design it is. In this case, it's the scarf. And I'm going to right click and I'm going to go to properties. When I look at things like the underlay and the angle and the density, some pieces have an option where it talks about compensation. This one does not. Oh yeah, here it is, compensation. And so with different fabric types, the compensation can be higher or lower to help accommodate for fabrics that stretch or move or are thicker. So if I cancel that, okay, just looking at why my phone is beeping at me. I'm going to select everything here, just erase him for the moment. I have him saved somewhere else. And I'm going to go to File, actually New, and we'll start with just a whole blank screen. So if I create an Express embroidery, and I'm going to pick, we talked about the snowflake before, but I'm going to grab the snowflake, and I'm going to go through the wizard. I'm just going to let it default to my little white snowflake. And y'all just gonna have to bear with me. Okay, I'm gonna leave it on woven and I'm gonna finish that. Should have made it smaller, but okay. So if I look at this, it's giving me my stitch count and my sizing. So we're at 23,000 stitches roughly, because my eyeballs are done for the day. And I'm gonna create a new Express embroidery. Load the picture, the same one, go next, and next, and next, remove all of that. But now I'm going to set it for a knit. Okay, I need to add my underlay. And why is it yelling at me? Oh, and I need to refresh it. That's why it's yelling at me. And I finished that. See, now I've got 26,000 stitches. Okay, and the only difference there was the fabric selection. So if you're familiar with Floriani software, and don't come at me about them because we work with that too here. But Floriani software has a piece in it that when you're done with a design, you can go through what's called save to sew. And it will actually make these modifications for a design that already exists. And it'll add more compensation and it'll add more pieces for the fabric type that you're using. We don't have that in our software, in this software, but we do have a smidge, a little tiny version of it when we create something, either in the Express Design Wizard, in the embroidery side, or here. And it just, let's see if I can grab this and drag it off. Yeah, that's the underlay. It layered it. It kind of puts more out there. And my opposite, my converse of that is take the same design if you've got some time, preferably something smaller, even something that's a satin stitch, and stitch it on a couple different fabric types. And you look at the design and it looks different. And so we've all stitched things out and we're like, but it doesn't look good. And we think it's the thread or it's the stabilizer, and it can be all of those things, but it also can be that a design is not well suited for that particular fabric type. And so this is where, if I'm creating a design, I may actually create, if I was doing a logo, I may create it differently for a polo, for a left chest polo. Then I'm going to create it for a full back. Then I'm going to create it for a cap, because the foundations are different. So my build has to be different. And this is kind of the only place where some of that is automated. And this is why really true digitizers are so good, and it's a skill and a craft, because a good digitizer will digitize the same design for Barbie. If she sends it off and she says, I need to put it on a hat and a jacket and a t-shirt, they may send her back, 3 different designs that all basically look the same, but have different levels of compensation and underlay within them, so that they all, when they actually stitch on all those different materials, look the same. Did that make sense? I know it's a really hard piece to grasp. And my easiest suggestion is stitch a skinny satin stitch lettering on a terry cloth or on a fleece, and it gets lost. And for something like that, you want a bigger, beefier letter. And even though when you're done, it may have been a bigger satin stitch, it may look very similar to what a skinnier satin stitch looks like on a woven, because of the foundation, because of the medium that we're using underneath of it. That I'm not watching the chat. Did that explain? Karen, do you think that explained?
Yeah.
Without getting into levels of digitizing that I don't want to get into, especially not because some of you are so much newer to this. So we didn't, and I'm just going to quickly talk about what we didn't talk about tonight. We didn't talk about all of the sort of manual tools. Is it Patricia or Patty, which do you prefer, young lady? That you came from 3D. Did you use, what was that? It was digitizing. It was just called digitizing. We had a lot,
yeah, it was, yeah.
It looked a lot more like these controls here. They're
Mhm.
manual. Yep. So you've still got all of that. But now we've got kind of an easier way to start and then modify from. So
I never really got it then. I'm almost getting it now.
well,
It takes a while.
it takes a while, and it's also about
Yeah.
perspective, like where you come into it from. Because I came from, anybody else here come from the DOS, originally the DOS software? Anybody else have DOS? I mean, y'all, that was like, you had to click around like all those little nodes. You had to click all those nodes into place to define an area. It was bad. But now I appreciate so much the fact that I have that knowledge and experience. And even though I hated it and I didn't use it, I understand it more now than I did then. Because then I wanted this I was like, technology should be here. And that was when I went away for about 10 years. And when I came back, we had 3D software. And I was like, this was what I wanted. And so now we have this amazing stuff. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is really, really what I want. So that said, here's what I'm going to task you guys with. Whether you get the handout or not, I would love to see you go through the same process again, because here's what we did. We just really went through File. We brought in a new, I'm not going to save those there, Express Wizard. Pick an image. I don't care which one. Pick one. I'm a sun and moon girl, so I'm going to pick that one. Say next and next and next, and let it do its thing. And then make some changes to it, because it'll come up on your screen. You'll have a film strip. You can pick a piece, right click on it, see what happens. And we haven't talked about these before, but see what actually, I'm not going to do the radial fill there. Let's do the radial
Yeah.
here.
In the sun. Yeah.
Yep. She was gonna tell me, stop it, don't do that there. So here's my radial fill in my sun. Well, it doesn't look that different. let me go ahead and change my properties. I'm gonna change my density to
Yep.
50. Okay, 40, I'm gonna change it to 40. Well, that didn't do a whole lot either.
Change the color so it's real different from the background.
Yep, that's exactly what, I'm like, why is it not showing up? Turn a color change, just, I know, suns aren't purple. Okay, but see, that's the only stitching. And you saw me, I'm able to move the origin around. Okay. So if I right click on that again and I change that to 10, apply. That's kind of cool looking. Now, I won't have the orange underneath, but I could manually layer them. I could put the orange underneath. I would just have to basically do it twice. But that's kind of cool looking. But play with it. This is a great place where in software, there's no needle, there's no thread, there's no waste, there's no time involved in watching it stitch out. You can make all kinds of changes and just see what it looks like. That moon looks like a banana to me. So, what do I know? But this is kind of the point where we want to empower you. And I like to do it almost more here, because once you play with things here, all the other stuff starts to make a lot more sense. You're like, oh, okay, well, that's I changed the density, and that's what, and density is a different animal. We think density is how many stitches, but density is actually the measurement of the space between the stitches, which is upside down from the way I would think it is, but that's how it is. So that's kind of, play with it. You've seen the basic of the quick, create it, and then make changes to it. You're not going to blow anything up. None of these are preset designs. They're images. So you can save 18 EDO files and you can save 72 PES files if you want. Push the buttons and play with it. It's not going to blow up and it's not going to hurt anything. And you can go, Bunny, the orange and purple together is the ugliest thing I've ever seen. Okay, I kind of like it, but okay. But this just, it automatically fills in pieces for me. Now, if I go to File and just to see, I'm going to export it. Okay, it's too large for this hoop, so I need to change my hoop. Oh, how do I have, oh, there's my original. Okay, File. Export embroidery. I'm going to save it as a VP3. And you can kind of see in the little thumbnail that I see the background color through. I'm going to put it on my desktop and save it as sun. Oh, I put the other one in my designs and not on my desktop. That's why I couldn't find it. My snowman. Let's put it there. And here's, watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back over to my embroidery module. I'm going to open from my desktop my sun, and there it is. Okay, but you can see how much of the background I see through there. Now, if I'm having a moment, maybe I'm having a moment. Have you guys met me? I'm going to undo and undo and undo. So I get back to that orange. And I'm going to delete these other colors.
Bunny, why don't you fade the background?
Because I can't figure out where that stupid button is.
Oh, it's under view.
Okay. I looked there earlier.
Oh,
Oh, there we go. Fade the background. Yeah, there we go. Okay. And I still have this, and let's right click on that and change it back to a pattern fill. Okay. And now I'm going to File and Export Embroidery. I just want that little piece because here's what I'm going to do. I'm I'm gonna change it to sun. And this is how I work. I kind of work in between the different pieces. And I go, oh, I want it to do this and I want it to do that. And I'm going to insert my sun center. That dropped over there, but here, watch. I'm going to grab the bigger piece. I'm going to cut it away. That puts my background in place, and I'm going to paste it back on top. And bam, there I get my orange and my purple in my sun at the same time. Now, do I expect you to think like I do? I don't. I go kind of sideways and backwards, but the point is that you can absolutely play with this. But if I look at this now and I say, you know, I wish that point of origin was maybe closer to the banana peel, I didn't save the EDO file, so I can't go back and I'd have to start from scratch. That's why I like to save the EDO files, so I don't have to do the whole thing over again. Okie dokie. Oh, that's why she wanted me to turn that. The orange, yep, the orange background was just, it was the image. We originally saw the image. Okay, yep, there we go. Picture showing. And why did I save as an EDO first? Just because for me an EDO is like the blueprint. So I would always save the blueprint before I would export it to the, you know, the finished version. But it doesn't really matter. I mean, as long as I'm saving them both right at the same time, I could export the embroidery first and then save the EDO. Okay. On that note, I know this was a lot. It was sort of less than we've had in some, but it's a completely new concept. And it's a holiday weekend coming up, and it's been, I don't know about the rest of you, but it's been a crazy week. So we are going to stop early. We're going to let Barbie get home. I'm going to have dinner at 9 o'clock at night. So before we finish up, does anybody have any other questions, even about something we've talked about before? I did not email the link for the YouTube, but it is on the YouTube channel. And I will add the other two classes. In fact, you guys want to watch? Let's see. Okay. Let's go back into my system, POS, classes. So this is the back end of my my database. Premiere, +2 new owners. So dates and times, we are going to add, we're going to repeat the class on, go away, repeat the class on, why is this March date come up? Go away, March date, there we go. July 15th, which is 2 weeks from now. Same bat time, same bat channel, so let's fix that. 7 to, Barbie's like, I'm tired of spending Thursday nights with you. And we're gonna make that 100. We're gonna do it again on July 29th from the pool. Okay, so those are out there on our website. To close the chat. Yes, they are each just like these were, except the second one I put 0 in. You will want to register for those. We have heard from a couple of people that sometimes you guys are having trouble with the checkout. Now these have a 0 cost, so it should not be a problem. But if you are having trouble with checkout for other things, let us know. Don't quite give up. There is a way for us to pull your orders down from our side. I will also mention, since I have you here, we are slowly adding Christmas in July. So we have a Christmas fabric special that's happening right now. They're the Stoff metallic Christmas fabrics. They're $5 a yard. They're up on our website. And then we have some classes. This OESD virtual embroidery on paper event it's on the calendar, but July 29th, that is completely free. We would love to have you join us. It says available seats 0 because you have to use this link right here. You have to use the OESD link to register for that because we're just the intermediary. They're the ones hosting that event. We also have, for those of you that are local, the Easy Stripe Table Runner that is including the fabric, and that is 4 hours hands-on or virtual. You can only take 6 people hands-on. And I think 2 of you have already registered. Betty Ann, did you just register for that?
Yes, I did.
In person or virtual?
Virtual.
Okay. I thought that your name was one of them.
Uh-huh.
So if you just go to our website and search for Christmas in July, in case you want to see more of us. I wonder if I just look up July, if it'll all come up. Okay, so you'll get to see embroidery designs with July and classes with dates in July and all kinds of other stuff. But that's a quick. So if you want to know who's teaching what, you can kind of break it down there. So there's product here and there's classes here and there's all kinds of stuff. And this picture hasn't been updated, but the fabric is coming. Actually, let me, since I've got you here, since you're just stuck with me. There's Betty Ann's. This is the Christmas fabric that is being included. Downloads. Might as well change it since I'm talking to you about it. So it's
Oh, that's pretty.
isn't it cute?
Yeah, I like that.
So it's the candles and then the background, because we're including the front and the back of the fabric. The backing is just this plaid, which I think would be perfect to have just, plain for Thanksgiving. And so you can just flip it over. So, whereas if you're me, I'm like obsessive and like all my little things would have to match up, which is why we're going to teach technique. But yeah, some of us are a little more obsessive than others that they all line up. I just pointed out that they don't all line up. Okay. And so let me upload that picture to my system. In case you guys ever wanted to know how this works. And so at least now you know that why it takes me so long sometimes, because it's not that simple. And if I go back out here and I refresh this one.
I'm glad you told us about the OESD class. I was confused when it said that it was filled already, and I only heard you mention it on Facebook today. So
Yep.
I thought people listened to you, see?
No, well, some of them have, but OESD has a much larger capacity. So there's the picture now on the website.
Mm-hmm.
And this one wasn't, just so everybody knows, this was not completed yet. So we folded the edges under. So that's why it looks a little funny. And probably why my finger is there.
Good folding.
Yeah, we just folded it to make it look better. And this was a screen capture from the video that we did earlier. But there are probably another dozen things for Christmas in July. There's almost like one every day or every other day. I think there's 4 for scan and cut. There's one that I'm going to do that can be scan and cut, scissors, or AccuQuilt. It's just a quickie. So there's a bunch of fun stuff coming.
How do we know which one of the table runner classes is the virtual one?
It should say, hang on. Really? Okay. Well, the one with less people in it should be the in-person. So Betty Ann wants to be virtual, which is fine. How do I fix that? I don't know that I can find a way to increase a dropdown. But see, I put this class ID in person versus virtual. So let me see. This is how you tell it. If you go to the websites. Yep, this is where it is. If you go out to the calendar, it says virtual versus in person. Betty Ann, don't panic.
No, I didn't. I selected virtual And I looked for the difference between and I couldn't see it. So I
Okay.
just thought you were smarter and I
No.
would get it later.
No, but I figured you were virtual anyway.
Okay,
Um,
But
yeah.
it shows both times when you go through the.
I know, I see that. I don't
I'm
know.
gonna pick the 12. I want to do virtual.
That's fine. Yeah, and we'll follow up with everybody.
Okay.
And then like I said, we're including the fabric. We know lots of you already have the pattern and already have the ruler. And so we just decided we're going to include the fabric rather than try and give you too much in a kit that you don't need. So, okay, on that note, and our long-term goal is to continue virtual and hybrid with in-person. And look at you guys just went and a bunch of you registered for classes. Woot. I'm so glad that every so often somebody listens to me. No. So, okay, here's the YouTube. 7 is up. When we're done tonight, I probably should have stopped recording. I'm going to stop recording now. Where's I can't do that from here. I'm going to stop the share. Okay, and we're going to stop recording.